My daughter filed a false restraining order to block me from her wedding, said I was a toxic presence. So I bought the venue the day before and canceled the booking. She walked down the aisle in a parking lot. What happened next shocked everyone. I will tell you everything. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout-out in our next story. Today's special shout-out goes to Sam Gray from New York. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I always figured I'd give a speech at my daughter's wedding. Nothing fancy, God knows I'm no poet, but something honest. Maybe a toast with a beer in hand, nothing pretentious. I would have said something like, here's to the kind of love that doesn't scare you into silence. But nobody asked me. Hell, nobody even told me when the damn thing was. It started small, the forgetting. Emily used to call me twice a week, even when she was busy in college. Then it was once. Then texts. Then just the occasional Instagram post I'd catch when Matt showed me on his phone. I figured she was busy building a life. That's what you want for your kids, right? I didn't expect to be the one she'd outgrow along the way. When she got engaged, I found out through a cousin. Not Emily. A cousin who saw the announcement online and called me like I was supposed to know. That was the first time I felt that familiar coldness creep in, like I'd been left outside a house I built myself. I didn't raise her fancy. Her mother and I were simple people. I worked long days in construction, and Angie worked part-time at the library while raising the kids. We didn't have much, but the house was always warm. Emily was our miracle baby after years of trying, and we damn near spoiled her. Ballet lessons, books, science kits, whatever she needed. When Angie passed, I did everything I could to keep Emily's world steady. I sat through recitals with a pounding heart and no idea what apply was, just so she wouldn't see me flinch under the weight of her grief. I paid for college out of pocket, no loans. Took extra shifts. Sold my vintage truck, the only thing I ever really spoiled myself with. She was going to be someone, I told myself. Not like me, with rough hands and a stiff back. She'd have a real life, one with wine glasses that match and a calendar full of dinner parties. And she got it. She met Tyler Jameson at a networking mixer her junior year. Real estate, from old money. You know the type. Leather shoes, expensive watch, smiles that never quite reach the eyes. First time I met him, he shook my hand like he was sealing a deal and called me Mr. Reyes 3 times in one conversation, like he was trying to impress a parole officer. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. Told myself not to make waves. But little things started changing after that. Emily stopped coming home for holidays. She said Tyler's family had traditions. She stopped wearing the pendant her mother gave her. Her hair changed. Her voice changed, less warmth, more polish. And when I tried to talk to her about it, she'd smile and say, "Dad, you worry too much. Everything's fine." So I let it be. I thought maybe it was just growing pains. Maybe she'd come around. But the real slap came one Sunday afternoon in May. I was sitting in my recliner, flipping through old photo albums, when Matt showed me a picture on his phone. Emily in a white dress. A brunch, apparently. Her engagement party. The caption read, "Can't wait to marry my best friend in August." August. 3 months away. I stared at that screen like it was lying to me. Like the pixels might rearrange and tell a different story. "Did you know about this?" I asked Matt, my voice like gravel. He hesitated. "I thought she'd told you." She hadn't. No call. No invite. Not even a damn text. The girl I taught to ride a bike. The girl whose tears I wiped the first time she got dumped in high school. She was having the biggest moment of her life, and I was just a footnote, if that. I didn't get angry. Not right away. I just felt small. Shrunk down to a version of myself I didn't recognize. That night, I poured myself a glass of bourbon and sat on the porch until the sun went down and the mosquitoes came up. I didn't cry. I just stared at the stars and wondered when my daughter stopped seeing me as a part of her life. I should have called her. Maybe confronted her. Asked why I was being left out like some ex-boyfriend she wanted to erase. But I didn't. Pride? Maybe. Or maybe I was just scared of what she might say. That I wasn't good enough. That I embarrassed her. So I waited. Hoped for a late invitation. A phone call. Something. It never came. And what did come would burn through whatever scraps were left between us. The envelope came on a Tuesday morning, thick paper, too official looking for bills, too cold for a card. I was nursing a black coffee in the kitchen, the dog still snoring in the corner. When I saw the county seal stamped on the front, I thought maybe it was a property notice, maybe some paperwork I forgot to file for the old contractor's license. I wasn't worried until I opened it. You are hereby ordered to comply with the attached restraining order effective immediately. At first, I didn't even understand what I was looking at. I blinked, reread the words like I'd forgotten how English worked. Then I saw her name. Emily Reyes, petitioner. My daughter. My little girl. The one I'd carried on my shoulders at every county fair until she was too tall to hold steady. She'd filed a restraining order against me. The paper said I was a toxic presence, that I had shown erratic behavior, created emotional distress, and made her feel unsafe at her own wedding. Unsafe. I sat down hard at the kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands. My stomach dropped like it knew something my mind hadn't caught up with yet. Unsafe. That word hit different. Like a knife, dull but deep. I had never once raised a hand to Emily. Never yelled at her, not in the way real men yelled. Sure, I was stern, blunt, maybe too quiet for comfort. But unsafe? The air in the kitchen thickened. I read the letter again and again, trying to find the lie that would break the spell. But it was all there, sealed by a judge, dated, signed. I didn't call her. What was I supposed to say? Why'd you lie about me to the state? That's not a question you can ask without losing something, no matter the answer. So I sat there for a long time, the silence loud in my ears, until my phone buzzed. Matt, you get the letter? He asked, voice tight. So you knew? I said. Yeah. Emily told me it was coming. She thought you'd try to crash the wedding. Crash it? I didn't even get invited. There was a pause on his end. I could hear him breathing, wrestling with whatever loyalty still flickered between us. She said you'd make a scene, that you'd embarrass her, that you were already making people uncomfortable. Did I? I asked. My voice wasn't raised, just steady. Too steady. Matt sighed. Dad, I think she just wants things to go smooth. She's under a lot of pressure. The Jamesons are a different kind of family. Oh, I see, I said, bitter creeping in. So I'm the storm cloud at their sunny little country club. She didn't mean it like that. She filed a damn court order, Matt. She meant it however it reads in that paper. He didn't have anything else to say, and I didn't want to hear more. I hung up. For the rest of the day, I paced the house like I'd lost something, looking in every room for a feeling that used to live there. I stared at old family photos, my wedding band tucked in a drawer, the dusty bookshelf where Emily's old trophies still sat. She used to beam every time I put one up. Now I was the threat. I wondered what she told them. Her fiancé, his parents. Did she say I was bitter? Controlling? Did they sit around a table, sipping wine I couldn't pronounce, deciding I was too blue-collar to belong? I could almost hear her. He's just not the same anymore. He makes everything about him. But I'd made everything about her. Every calloused finger, every slipped disc in my back, every lonely night after her mother died, I didn't complain. I just showed up, over and over again. And this was how it ended. A letter. I sat in my truck that evening, parked in front of the old church where she used to sing in the children's choir. The lights were off, but the memories weren't. I thought about walking inside, just to feel the pews, the silence, the ghosts of Sundays past. But I didn't. I stayed in the driver's seat, staring out through the windshield as the sky faded from orange to charcoal. That's when the idea came. I remembered something Matt said in passing once about the venue. The Jamesons had picked a rustic little vineyard outside town. Classy, but not as high-end as their style usually demanded. The place had been struggling to stay open after the pandemic. Rumor was they were looking for a buyer. It was a small thought at first. Just a flicker. But flickers catch, don't they? And if she didn't want me there, well, I could still make my presence felt. Not out of vengeance. Not exactly. But if I was toxic, then fine. Let her find out what happens when the poison gets removed. I didn't sleep much after the letter. My mind ran like a rusted engine. Slow, grinding, loud. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., stare at the ceiling, and wonder if maybe I was losing it. I'd never seen myself as a vengeful man. Retaliation wasn't my instinct. I was raised to grit my teeth, swallow the insult, and keep the line moving. But something about that letter, something about being redefined by my own daughter in ink and legal jargon. It flipped a switch I didn't even know was there. I wasn't angry the way people shout and throw things. I was angry like winter. Still. I see. Unforgiving. That Friday, I drove out to the vineyard. It was about 40 minutes outside of town, tucked into a small valley that once hosted weekend weddings, wine tastings, and live music under fairy lights. Now, the sign was faded and the parking lot cracked with weeds pushing through. The gate creaked when I opened it. The place looked tired, but not dead, like it was waiting for someone to remember it. Inside, I met the owner, a woman in her 60s named Delia who looked like she'd aged 10 years in the last 2. She walked with a slight limp and greeted me with cautious politeness. I told her I was interested in buying. "You looking to flip it or actually run it?" she asked, voice sharp. "Not sure yet," I said honestly. "I'm just looking for a place that doesn't belong to anyone else." She looked at me a long second before nodding. "You've got the face of someone who's been shut out of too many places." We talked numbers. She showed me the books, thin, red, desperate. The Jamesons had made a partial payment, apparently, but hadn't finalized. They were supposed to sign the final contract Monday. I told Delia I'd pay cash if she could close by end of day Saturday. She stared at me. "You got some kind of grudge, don't you?" I didn't blink. "Let's just say I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter." Delia smirked. "Well, honey, money talks louder than hurt feelings. Let's get you the keys." By noon Saturday, the place was mine. It was surreal, signing those papers. I hadn't owned anything new in years. Not since Angie died. I'd paid off the house, never bought a new car, didn't travel. Everything I had saved was for the kids, college, weddings, emergencies. Turns out, this was the emergency. The final step was calling the wedding planner. I used the number I found in an email Emily had once forwarded, back when she still CC'd me on anything. "This is Rebecca," a chipper voice answered. "Hi, Rebecca. This is Daniel Reyes. I'm the new owner of Willow Creek Vineyard." Pause. "Oh, I'm sorry, the new what?" "Owner. Bought it yesterday. Just wanted to let you know the venue won't be hosting any events for a while. Certainly not tomorrow." The silence stretched long. "But we have a wedding scheduled. Emily and Tyler, I'm aware. You'll need to notify them. The contract's void. Was never finalized. Consider this a courtesy call." She stammered, trying to sound professional while clearly panicking. "Mr. Reyes, this could cause real hardship for them. We're less than 24 hours away." "I imagined so," I said quietly. "But that's not my problem anymore." And I hung up. I didn't gloat. I didn't toast myself. I just sat on the porch of the vineyard with a thermos of coffee, looking out at the rows of untrimmed vines. The sun dipped low, and the air smelled like earth and bruised fruit. It was quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. I thought of Angie. God, what would she say? Probably something gentler than what I'd done. She was the buffer between me and the world. She softened me. But she wasn't here. And the girl we'd raised had decided I was no longer fit to attend her wedding. So I did what she asked. I stayed out. But not quiet. I didn't go home that night. I stayed in the small guest house behind the vineyard. I didn't want to see my neighborhood. Didn't want questions from nosy neighbors who still remembered Emily as a sweet girl with pink barrettes and skinned knees. That version of her was long gone, replaced by someone who wore me like an old coat she didn't want to be seen in. The next morning, I dressed like I would any other Sunday. Jeans, button-down, worn boots, and walked out to the gravel driveway as the first confused cars arrived. I stayed in the background, arms folded, leaning against the fence. It didn't take long before word spread. There was no venue, no chairs, no string quartet, no open bar, just the hot sun and a parking lot. And then I saw her, Emily, standing by a white SUV, hair curled, veil in hand, mouth open in disbelief. Her phone was pressed to her ear, then she slammed it down and turned to look around. And when her eyes found me across the fence line, they narrowed. She walked over. Alone. "Dad, what did you do?" Her voice cracked, not in sadness, but fury laced with desperation. "I followed your orders," I said calmly. "You didn't want me near your wedding. Now it's not near me." Her lip quivered. "You ruined everything." "No," I said. You did that the day you decided I was a threat to your perfect day? I just gave you what you asked for. Please, she whispered. You've made your point. Just let it happen. I met her eyes, cold and steady. Emily, I spent my life showing up for you. You kicked me out with a lie. That was your choice. This, I gestured to the barren space behind me, is mine. And then I walked away. By the time I got back to my truck, the yelling had started. It was distant. Half-shouted names, the wedding planner nearly in tears, and the sound of folding chairs being unloaded from a rental van like someone had just remembered it was still a wedding day. Damn it. And guests were arriving. No music. No aisle. No altar. Just a half-paved parking lot surrounded by gravel and dry summer grass. I sat in the cab with the windows down, arms crossed, watching it all unfold through the windshield like it was some kind of tragicomedy. One of those reality shows where rich people fall apart in high definition. Guests began to arrive in suits and silk dresses, stepping out of luxury cars and rental buses, with looks of confusion and barely concealed judgment. Most had been promised a charming vineyard ceremony. Now they were being handed bottled water and guided to sit on folding chairs hastily lined up in a strip of shade near the building's side wall. Tyler showed up half an hour later, pacing back and forth with a cell phone pressed so tight to his ear, it might have fused with his skull. I couldn't hear the words, but his body language said it all. Angry, cornered, exposed. Good. And then came the part one hadn't quite prepared for, watching Emily walk out in her wedding dress. It hit me harder than I expected. For a split second, she looked just like her mother. Soft features, that same determined jawline, veil trailing behind her like smoke. The dress was simple but elegant, not the kind of thing I ever imagined she'd wear, but it suited her. I felt something stir in my chest that I didn't want to name. She didn't see me at first. Her eyes were locked on the mess in front of her chairs, guests fanning themselves. The ceremony arch that was supposed to frame her vows now sitting in pieces against a stucco wall. The officiant, a friend, maybe, stood awkwardly in a makeshift spot near the end of the row, waiting for some kind of signal. And then someone played music off a Bluetooth speaker, tinny and weak, the classical notes struggling to hold dignity. Emily walked down a strip of asphalt, past cracked paint and an overflowing trash can, to meet a man who didn't even have the decency to look grateful. And still, some part of me hoped she'd stop. Turn. Look for me. She didn't. The vows were short. Rushed. Some guests didn't even stand. A few older relatives looked around, unsure if this counted. Cameras stayed in pockets. Nobody cried. Except Emily. She cried when it was over. I saw her wipe her eyes with the back of her hand like a frustrated child, like she couldn't understand how a dream turned into a bruise. That's when she saw me again. She left Tyler's side mid-conversation, walking across the lot with her heels clicking hard against the pavement. Determined. Humiliated. Raging. Dad, she said through clenched teeth. You made your point. Okay. You got what you wanted. Happy. I didn't stand. I stayed leaning against my truck, arms crossed. Calm. You said I was toxic, I said flatly. You wanted me out of your life. I just gave you space. She blinked fast. Her mascara had started to smudge. You could have just stayed away. You didn't have to do this. I didn't crash your wedding. I bought the land it was supposed to happen on. You shut the door in my face, so I bought the damn house. Emily's mouth opened, but no words came. I was never invited. Never even acknowledged. And then you send me legal papers like I'm a criminal. My voice stayed level. Not loud. Not cruel. Just final. I've put up with being an outsider in your life for years. But this was the moment I realized I didn't need to beg anymore. I didn't mean it that way. You meant it exactly that way, I interrupted. You wanted your life polished and perfect, and I don't fit the image. I'm just the man who gave you everything I had and asked for nothing back. But I'm not a prop, Emily. I'm your father. Her eyes filled again, but she said nothing. After a long pause, she whispered, So that's it. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that's it. She stood there for a moment, stunned, angry, maybe even guilty. But she didn't apologize. And I didn't ask her to. When she finally turned and walked back toward her guests, I watched her go with something like sadness, but not regret. There was a difference. I didn't stay for the reception. Didn't want to see the facade patched together with lukewarm food and tight smiles. I started the truck, rolled down the window one last time, and looked out at the crowd. Not one of them looked happy. Not really. I didn't ruin her day. She did that the moment she decided her father's love was an inconvenience. The days after the wedding felt like the quiet that comes after a fire, when the smoke still clings to everything, and the air's too thick to breathe, but the heat is gone. What's left isn't rage. It's absence. Stillness. Something scorched clean. Matt came by 2 days later, pacing my front porch like he wasn't sure whether to knock or turn back. "You going to stand out there all day or come in?" I said through the screen door. He flinched like I'd slapped him with words alone. Inside, we sat at the kitchen table. No coffee. No small talk. "She's not doing great," he said finally. I didn't respond. I watched the dust floating in the strip of sunlight across the table, the way it danced like it didn't care whose heart got broken this week. Matt sighed. "You really bought the place?" "The whole vineyard." I nodded. "It was for sale. I made an offer. You know, you could have just not done that. And she could have not called me dangerous in a court document," I said flatly. "But here we are." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Dad, I'm not saying what she did was right. It wasn't. But you burned the whole bridge down." "No," I said, calmer than I expected. "I just refused to keep walking across one she already cut in half." Matt's jaw tightened. "Do you even want a relationship with her?" I let that sit in the air for a long while before answering. I wanted a daughter who didn't erase me to make room for someone else's version of success. I wanted to be respected, not tolerated. I wanted to feel like family. Matt leaned back. "She says you embarrassed her." I looked at him. Hard. "That's funny. I spent most of my life making sure she had nothing to be embarrassed about." He didn't argue. Just lowered his eyes and ran a hand through his hair. "I think she's waiting for you to reach out," he said softly. I laughed once. Dry. She had her say. She made it legal. I heard her loud and clear. The truth was, I wasn't angry anymore. I'd passed that stage. Anger was fire. This was smoke. Lingering. Unavoidable. But slowly disappearing. In the weeks that followed, I boxed up a lot of things. Old photos. Emily's dance trophies. Birthday cards with her crooked childhood handwriting. I didn't throw them out. I'm not made of stone. But I packed them neatly and stacked the boxes in the garage. Out of sight, not out of memory. I started spending more time at the vineyard. Not to run it. God knows I wasn't trying to become a wedding planner, but to make it livable. I fixed the roof, repainted the porch, pulled weeds, planted new ones. It was quiet work, healing work. People started to take notice. A few locals stopped by to ask if I was reopening. I told them maybe, maybe not. I wasn't sure. But I liked the idea of the place being useful again. Something beautiful rising out of something broken. Emily didn't call. Not directly. But one afternoon, a letter came. No return address, but the handwriting was hers. Inside was a single page. "Dad, I don't know what to say to you. I'm angry. I'm hurt. But mostly I'm confused. You humiliated me. And yet, I also know I pushed you away. Maybe we're both wrong. Maybe we're both just too damn proud. I don't know what kind of relationship we're supposed to have after this. But I'm not ready to say goodbye forever." Emily, I read it twice. Then folded it and put it in the drawer with the other letters I never sent. I didn't write back. It wasn't punishment. It was peace. Because sometimes the best boundary you can draw isn't a wall, it's distance. A space where hurt doesn't echo and love isn't measured in guilt or silence, but in the choice to stop bleeding for someone who keeps opening the wound. That was my choice now, and I was going to stand by it. The vineyard bloomed slow but steady. By late spring, the rows of vines had taken to the soil again. I didn't know much about grapes. I still don't. But I learned how to listen. To the ground. To the air. To the things that don't speak but always tell the truth. I hired a couple of teenagers from the nearby high school to help with cleanup. One of them, Milo, asked if I was planning to turn it into a wedding venue again. I told him maybe. Told him the last wedding planned here didn't go so well. He laughed, not knowing the story. I didn't correct him. The place started drawing attention. A few small events, a birthday party, even a proposal picnic someone arranged under the trellis I rebuilt with my own hands. They called it rustic charm. I called it surviving. People smiled out here. They took pictures. Laughed. Hugged. It was strange, watching strangers build memories in a place that had become my personal war zone. But slowly, the land began to shift in my mind, not a battlefield, but something reclaimed. I didn't talk about Emily. Not to guests. Not to neighbors. Not even to Matt, who still visited sometimes. Always careful not to say her name like it might shatter the fragile stillness between us. He'd bring me stories from the outside world, his kids, his wife, the job, and I'd listen with a mix of pride and caution, like a man who's learned not to take love for granted. One day, a woman in her 50s came by asking if we rented the space for anniversary dinners. Her voice trembled when she said her husband had passed, and she just wanted to sit where they used to come during better years. I told her she could use the whole place for free. She cried, thanked me, sat for hours under the oak tree, staring out at the vines. That night, I wrote a letter I never intended to send. Emily, I saw a woman today who lost someone she loved. And I thought about your mother. And I thought about how grief changes people. How it hardens some, softens others. I don't know if we're ever going to be close again. I don't know if you even want that. But I hope someday, if you walk through these gates again, it's not out of obligation or bitterness. I hope it's because you remember what we built here, before the anger, before the silence. I hope you come back when you're ready. If you never do, I'll still be here. Dad, I folded it. Set it in a drawer with the others. Weeks passed. Then months. No reply. No letter. But one evening, I saw a car pull into the gravel drive. A white SUV. Familiar. It didn't park. It just sat there for a minute before slowly backing out and driving away. She didn't come inside. And that was okay, because I wasn't waiting anymore. Now I sit on a bench I built myself, sturdy, smooth, with a view of the valley, and I breathe. Not hoping. Not grieving. Just living. Sometimes peace isn't loud. It's not a parade or a breakthrough moment. It's the absence of chaos. The quiet edge where pain stops echoing and becomes something softer. I didn't destroy her wedding. I reclaimed my dignity. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. If this story moved you, consider subscribing for more deeply personal family dramas that explore betrayal, boundaries, and emotional reckonings. Each tale is a raw, honest journey through the fractures that shape us and the strength it takes to walk away. Don't miss the next one.